Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast. Who won the 12-day war between Israel and Iran? Israel claims victory, insisting it has achieved all its war aims, including degrading Iran's nuclear weapons capability, the nuclear capabilities and ballistic missile launching abilities. Iran, on the other hand, claims victory, having targeted Israel even today and the largest US airbase in the region in Qatar last night. The US too claims it's won big, and that's a big win for American diplomacy. But both Iran and Israel may have agreed to a ceasefire. Who has won the war remains our top focus story. Israel or Iran? Who won the 12-day war? Did Israel achieve its military aims? Can Iran claim victory? Has Donald Trump struck a good deal? Will West Asia tensions ease or escalate further? That's our top focus on India First. Both Israel and Iran may claim victory in the 12-day war, but there are several unanswered questions. What happens to Iran's enriched uranium stockpile? Where is that stockpile today? Will Iran continue with its nuclear program, or did the US truly bomb it to Stone Age with the B-2 bombers using the GBU-57 bunker-buster bombs? What happens now to Israel's operations at the Gaza Strip? And has Israel succeeded in emerging as a superpower that not only bombed Iran, but was Tehran able to live to fight another day? There are many questions we seek answers to because West Asia remains on the edge. I'm Gaurav Sawant. As always, let's get started. After nearly 2 weeks of relentless firepower and global anxiety, there is a fragile calm in place, a fragile truce that seems to be in place in West Asia. In what is being termed as the 12-day war, Israel and Iran both agreed to a ceasefire. Israel claims it severely degraded Iran's strategic and military capabilities. Tehran, on the other hand, is framing the ceasefire as a massive victory. In fact, even as we speak, there is a massive victory parade that's on in Tehran. So where does that leave US President Donald Trump and the United States of America? The big question being, who won the 12-day long war, and will it lead to lasting peace in the region?
He came, he bombed, and he entered the war. At least that is what Donald Trump wants the world to believe. 2 days after a fleet of stealthy American bombers struck deeply buried Iranian nuclear facilities, Trump announced a complete and total ceasefire in the war between Israel and Iran. He wrote on his Truth Social site, and I quote, "I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war." The Trump truce, however, lasted only a few hours. Sirens blared in Haifa, the Galilee, and the Golan Heights after Iran launched ballistic missiles at Israel. Damaged cars, storefronts, and debris were seen in Beersheba after an Iranian missile hit a residential building.
I'm right now in Beersheba, where today Iran launched ballistic missiles on the residential buildings, and the state of destruction is quite evident. The impact of this destruction is evident on this particular building. This is a multi-story building which has been damaged, completely devastated. The restoration work is going on here. You can see the workers who are continuing the restoration here. And this is the biggest ever attack in last 12 days. And the timing is very important to understand because this was happening when the ceasefire claims were coming in from United United States President.
In retaliation, Israel launched targeted attack on Iran's missile launchers.
I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. Do you understand that?
The fragile truce came after Iran fired 12 missiles at the US base at Al Udeid, Qatar. One per American bomb dropped. Advance notice was given to avoid casualties, and all but one missile were intercepted. Iranian state media claimed victory, playing patriotic songs and celebrating the strike. So who won? Trump administration says Iran's nuclear threat is neutralized.
I think it's been completely demolished. I think the reason we're here is because those pilots, those B-2 pilots, did an unbelievable job.
Israeli officials say most planned targets in Iran were destroyed. Netanyahu likely sees this as a legacy-defining win. Iran has framed limited retaliation as heroic. The regime survives and avoids all-out war with a superpower. While the immediate war may have paused, the region's long-term stability and Iran's nuclear ambitions remain unresolved. Bureau Report, India Today.
So are there any clear winners in the 12-day Iran-Israel war? Is this a temporary truce or a lasting ceasefire? Will it lead to lasting peace, cold peace, or can it trigger another hot war? Joining me on this India Today special broadcast is Mohammad Khatibi. He's Iran's former foreign policy analyst and a Middle East affairs expert. Joining us on this broadcast, Jonathan Spire is an Israeli analyst. He's director of research at the Middle East Forum. Ambassador Anil Truguniat is former ambassador to Jordan, Libya and Malta. Will join us in a moment. Sandeep Unnithan is a senior journalist. He's covered West Asia conflict extensively. Joins me on this broadcast. Mohammad Khatabi, if I may begin by asking you, is there merit in Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claiming victory, having achieved Israel's military aims, degrading Iran's nuclear program, setting it back by years, and targeting multiple missile and air bases? Is this victory for Israel?
No, I don't think that Israel has won this. Israel has been targeting Iran's civilian areas and not just military and nuclear sites. And it has been targeting many areas. So Israel was under heavy missile and drone attacks by Iran, and Iranians were capable to do that even further. And so Iran's program will continue because Iran now has many issues and now has enriched uranium, many amounts of uranium, and Israel hasn't destroyed it. Iran has in years gained many experience in enriching uranium, and that knowledge can't be destroyed. But the situation right now has no winners because Iran have been targeting Israel, and Israel was not able to intercept all of Iranian missiles. And I think Israel's interceptors were running out, and this is a fragile ceasefire, and no one knows that in coming days what will happen.
So it's a very fragile ceasefire that's in place, you say. Jonathan Spire, Iran was able to strike Israel even today. Only half of Iran's launchers and missiles have been destroyed. The other half remain intact. There are reports that indicate that Iran was able to move enriched uranium out of Fordo and other facilities before the US planes hit. Not many know how much of that enriched uranium. Some accounts say more than 400 kilograms. Some say even more. They don't know how much and they don't know where it is. Can a bomb still be made at a secret location? And if so, how can this be victory for Israel?
First of all, I think it's a rather simplistic framing to be squabbling about who won and who didn't. If we want to have a serious conversation, let's maybe look at some of the facts of what's taken place. I think it's true that Iran may well have managed to conceal some of its enriched uranium, and I think it's very true that this may not be known, the exact location and the exact amount. In terms of what has been achieved from an Israeli point of view, Israel had complete domination over the skies of Iran for several days. The main number of Iranian nuclear scientists have been taken out, along with the leadership of both the army and the Revolutionary Guards Corps. Israel showed that it can operate an organization on the ground inside Iran, target senior officials and take them out, and then disappear with nobody getting caught and nobody being seen. So Israel demonstrated, I think, complete military dominance over Iran, and this is without a doubt. It's true that the Iranians hit back, and unfortunately 28 Israeli civilians, no soldiers, but 28 civilians were targeted and killed. But this is not, I think, of strategic importance, tragic, though, of course, the loss of life is. So this is the way I would see it. The Iranian program has been undoubtedly set back by many years. And from this point of view, Netanyahu can claim an achievement. But having said that, the regime is still there. There's no question of the Iranian regime disappearing. There's no deal with regard to future uranium enrichment, so the Iranians are free to try to do whatever they think they can do, which means it's likely that we're going to be seeing something similar a few years down the line. What Israel has essentially done is kind of pulled the clock back from midnight, so to speak, several minutes or maybe many minutes, but the general direction is the same. A deeply hostile regime committed to Israel's destruction with a nuclear program it will now set about, I think, trying to repair.
And perhaps most secretly with no role or little role for IAEA, as some argue. Ambassador Trigonayat, Natanz, Fordo and Isfahan bombed both by Americans and the Israeli Air Force. Bushehr and Ashura bases bombed very recently. Several top commanders killed, air bases and missile launchers destroyed. Is Israel on top of the situation, or is this a no-win situation? Both bruised, both bloodied, no winners here.
Well, personally, I feel it's a no-win situation because both Iran and Israel have virtually been at each other's necks, not from now, since 1979. And both have, as I have always said, suffer from this mad syndrome, and they want to destroy each other. There is this, they consider one another as the existential threat. And so that is not going anywhere, even if we are going to have the ceasefire. But at the same time, I would quite agree that definitely the Iranian nuclear program, as far as the aspirations for a bomb, which they decline and they deny always that they have any, would have been set back. Secondly, I would also agree with Jonathan to a great extent that Israeli intelligence, frankly, has redeemed itself after the failure and humiliation of October 7. And they have been able to take out the top leadership, military and others, which is a very big worry for Iran at the moment going forward. And I think that that's what they are going to do. We are in a way satisfied and happy that at least the regime change agenda for the time being appears to be put on hold, which is something that has been the biggest disaster of the policy, US policy anywhere that they have applied. On the other hand, I mean, if you were to objectively think of it, I think all three countries, USA, Iran, and Israel, have found an off-ramp in this current disaster, which some could call even a prefix match. And so I think that, but it is not a bad thing if it has happened. We hope that this sustains and Iran gets back to the table with the United States to work out some kind of a deal which takes care of all the red lines of the region, basically. You know, in this, I would presume that the role of Qatar was very, very important to allow its own land and its air bases, US air bases located there, to be even symbolically attacked. I mean, that is something, a big thing, and I think that it's a good thing. And Qatar has emerged as a very major player. 2 days ago, Israel had approached Qatar that they were ready to stop the escalation, but Iran said that it has to take some kind of a symbolic gesture response to the US thing, and that's what has happened. And now we have to see how it plays out. Certain violations are common.
I'll come to the fixed match in just a moment. I'll come to that fixed match, claim in just a moment. But Sandeep, militarily, when you look at the operations that have been carried out by both sides? You've heard our guests from Israel and Iran. Militarily, has it been advantage Israel over Iran, or is it a 50-50 balance?
Gaurav, it's a clear Israeli victory. I mean, there's no other way to look at this. You know, this war began on the 7th of October 2023, 20 months ago, with that horrific massacre of Israeli civilians. And, you know, what was Israel facing at that time? It's looking at one of its biggest intelligence failures since the Yom Kippur War of 1973. You have Benjamin Netanyahu, on whose watch this horrific massacre happened. And since then, the last 20 months, Prime Minister Netanyahu has waged a war of attrition. This is something that Iran never expected. This is a war that both countries have been fighting since 1979, as Ambassador Trigunyat mentioned. It's one of the most bizarre conflicts. These two countries don't share a common border. They're 1,000 kilometers apart. Iran had reared this entire ring of proxies around Israel precisely for this, to ensure that it was like a Chakravyuh kind of thing around Iran, so that Iran could not be directly attacked by the United States or Israel. Since then, since October 7th, Israel has dismantled all of Iran's proxies, starting from Hamas, then Hezbollah. They've degraded the capacities of the Houthis, and finally, they've reached the den of their arch enemy, Iran. They've knocked down their missile defenses, they've attacked their bases, they've killed their scientists, killed their generals, and they've got the United States to bomb nuclear facilities inside Iran using that specialist ammunition that Israel didn't have, the GBU-57 MOPS. So, I mean, Israel, it's win-win for Israel all the way. This is a kind of victory that, it's not imagined in the last couple of decades. And let's not forget, Gaurav, they've also overseen the fall of the house of Assad. Syria is no longer controlled by the House of Assad. That's something that, again, held for 50 years. So Benjamin Netanyahu has reshaped West Asia.
Beyond the 12th day, and we take it from the 7th of October 2023 war of attrition, which was always argued would be disadvantage Israel. Mohammad Khatibi, you want to weigh in? It's been advantage Israel, the fact that all of Iran's proxies have systematically been taken down. Most important, if not, one of the most important, if not the most important, Assad regime in Syria no longer there. And after the regime was removed, a 2-week-long bombing drive where all those weapons that the Assad regime had, they were also destroyed. So Hamas taken down, Hezbollah taken down, Houthis weakened, Assad regime weakened, and Tehran bombed repeatedly.
So, as I see it right now, this is a one-sided conversation that every other guest is against Iran, are thinking that Israel has won this. But before answering all of your questions, I go to the Israeli analyst that said that 28 civilians have been killed. Why doesn't talk about hundreds of civilians killed in Iran? Why doesn't he talk about banks that were targeted and ordinary civilians were targeted? Many women and children have been killed in Iran. And Israel has been carrying out ethnic cleansing in Gaza. Why don't he talk about such things? 50,000 lives have been lost in Gaza, and Israel has been damaging everything in southern Lebanon. It has carried out massive operations in Syria after fall of Assad, and this is continued in other places in the region. So he says that Iran's military have been degraded and military leadership has been gone, but we have seen that after 1 or 2 days, all of those commanders were replaced, and Iran was capable to attack Israel and still is capable to carry out massive operations against Israel and also US bases in the region. The attack on Qatari airbase in Qatar was not symbolic. It was a warning sign that Iran is capable to carry out operations against Israeli assets as well as US assets in the region and US air bases and other US troops in the region. So the important thing that I would like to mention that Iran's allies now have the capability to carry out operations against Israel. Hezbollah has its large amounts of missiles and drones, and it has the capability to carry out operation. After 2 years of bombing Yemen, Yemen has been able to carry out operations against Israel. And the situation is not like Iran lost everything and Israel won. If that was, Israel wouldn't have been. Israel could have launched more operations because Israel wants Iran to be changed, wants a regime change in Iran. But now that it sees that its interceptors and its defensive systems are not capable to deal with Iranian missiles and drones, it has agreed to a ceasefire. And the pressure that Iran can put on regional states as well as global energy markets can't be undermined because Iran is capable to carry out heavy and operations in the Strait of Hormuz and can't close it. And Israel can't do anything about it. By targeting airspace and becoming targeted by air, no one can do a regime change, especially in Iran, which is a vast country.
I'll come to regime change in just a moment. So far, I'm on aspects that were declared aims of war. Nobody is anti-Iran, at least not on this broadcast. We are very clear about it. The fact that you're on this broadcast, you have your say uninterrupted, is proof that everyone has a point of view and they're free to air it. We do not, of course, also have an Ayatollah who will dictate what will be said on television. That is something that I must make very clear, on this broadcast. But Jonathan Spire, both the US and Israel together could not bring Iran to its knees despite 12 days of relentless operations by day and by night. The targeting of the Al Ubaid airbase, Iran insists, is not symbolic. It was to send out a very clear message. Iran not only remains in the fight, but can put pressure on global energy markets. And there is clarity that Iran will continue, at least that is the information that's coming, even if it's through sources and chatter in Iran, that they will continue with their uranium enrichment program. They will pursue their nuclear program. Does this not indicate that despite billions of dollars being pumped in by Israel, not much was achieved, sir?
With regard to Al Udeid, I think it's a little bit amusing. I mean, it reminds me of what took place after the Al-Quds Force leader, Qasem Soleimani, was killed, where the Iranians, feeling a need to save face, sort of got in touch with the people they were going to target to warn them they were going to target them so that planes and individuals could be removed so that nobody would get hurt. If this is our idea of an effective reprisal, then I would hate to see an ineffective one. But I think more substantively, what's interesting, and the earlier speaker hinted at this, is the complete failure and indeed eclipse of Iran's long-standing policy of seeding Islamist proxy political and military organizations in surrounding countries. And I think the most glaring example of that is that when Israel attacks Iran directly in June, all the proxies who for 20 or 30 years have been benefiting from Iranian training and finance and money and assistance decline, every single one of them, to jump in and help. Naim Qassem, the leader of Hezbollah, was very willing to offer some rhetoric and absolutely nothing more from the battered Lebanese Hezbollah organization north of Israel's border. The Iraqi Shia militias, the Hashd al-Sha'bi, benefiting from Iranian money and assistance for many years, declined to risk their own personal wealth and resources in the assistance of the Iranians. So I would have thought that the Quds Force and Revolutionary Guards should be quite disappointed. Their massive investment in country after country in the Arab world has yielded them precisely nothing. We were told for years that these militias were there for the moment when Israel attacked Iran's nuclear facilities. Well, Israel has attacked Iran's nuclear facilities and together with the Americans has crippled and degraded Iran's nuclear facilities. And these gentlemen across the Arab world, maybe wisely from their point of view, declined to offer any assistance whatsoever. So I think what we've seen there is very fascinatingly from an analytical point of view, the complete eclipse and defeat of a whole vision of the late Qasem Soleimani and a whole generation of resources wasted across the Arab world with nothing really remaining of it. With regard to the Strait of Hormuz, I mean, the gentleman perhaps thinks that Iran can mine the Strait of Hormuz. I suggest to him that Iran probably will not do so. And the reason why Iran will not do so, I think, is because Iran could mine the Strait of Hormuz, but then the United States Navy would send the Iranian Navy to the bottom of the sea within about 24 hours. as every serious analyst knows. So I think what we've had demonstrated over the recent days is really the very extreme weakness of Iran. After lots of talk and blabber and rhetoric for decades, trying to frighten others and boasting and about axes of resistance and the rest of it, we see that this is a very weak country which cannot even defend its own skies, let alone effectively have proxy organizations and project power across the region. Having said that, it's important to know, and we're right to say, the regime has survived. It's still able, of course, to slaughter its own people as it likes to do. And this, I'm afraid, will be a matter for the Iranian people, the great majority of whom reject, of course, the Islamic Republic and Islamist regime. And we hope very much that it will be them and not we who will take the matter of bringing this regime to an end. The speaker is, of course, right. The gentleman is right to say regimes cannot be changed by air power, or air power alone, at least. And this, of course, was not the intention either of Israel or the United States. I hope the regime goes soon. I think the Iranian people will be the people who will bring it down.
Before I bring in Ambassador Trigunath, Mohammad Khadabi, you want to quickly respond to the points being made. None of the allies were able, either in a position or willing to come to Iran's rescue at a time when Iran's nuclear assets were being taken down, point one. Point two, what now happens to Iran's support for Hamas in Gaza? Because Israel's made it very clear, and I interviewed Israel's ambassador to India, Reuven Hazar. That will just play out in moments from now, where he insists Israeli forces will remain inside Gaza as long as it takes to get Hamas out. If Hamas leaves power, Israeli forces will come out. There will be a democratic, moderate force there, but not Hamas. Will Iran continue to support Hamas at Gaza?
So I have a question from the other guest. Without the US support for Israel, would Israel dare to attack Iran? Would have attacked Iran, or is it just because of the US? He is talking about US sending Iran's navy to bottom of the ocean, but can he tell why Israel couldn't have attacked Iran in the Biden administration? Why? Because now Trump is all in with Israel, and without the US support, it can't do nothing. And without the US support, it couldn't have done anything to force in the Iranian territory. So about the Iranian allies, these are not proxies that everyone is claiming in the West. These are people who align with the ideology of resistance, not proxies. They have their own issues, just like what China and Russia has. These have their own decision making, and their decision making is different than what Iran has. For example, in Yemen, they continue to attack Israel despite calls for restraint from many people, including Iranians, not the leadership, actually. So these are not proxies, these are single entities that want Israel to be restrained. For example, in Gaza, they are trying to attack Israel because Israel is destroying everything in Gaza, and it has leveled the whole strip to the ground and now is expanding settlements in occupied West Bank. These people are against Israel because of the ethnic cleansing in the Palestinian territories. So
will Israel's military, will Iran's military support to Hamas remain, or any kind of support to Hamas remain even after this, even after ceasefire?
I don't think that anything will change. Iran will continue pursuing its peaceful nuclear energy, and it will restore everything. And we have heard today from Iran's atomic agency chief that they have taken measures to restore enrichment. And about the situation in the Middle East, I don't think that Iran will stop the support for the so-called resistance axis, because this has not the case for many years. And Iran, since the revolution in Iran, has been supporting every person who is willing to confront the Western imperialism.
You want to quickly respond before I bring in Ambassador Trigunath and Sandeep Punithan? You want to quickly respond, sir?
Both Iran and Israel are
Jonathan Spear, you want to quickly respond to the point about Iran's support to Hamas will remain and the nuclear enrichment program will continue.
Sure. Well, with regard to support for the proxies and so on, the creations of the Revolutionary Guards Corps like Hezbollah, and also with Hamas, which was, of course, not created by the Iranians, I'm sure it will continue. I think it's a wasted investment by Iran, as has been indicated in recent days, but I imagine they'll continue to pour their money down that particular drain. With regard to enrichment, yes, I think, as I said at the beginning, it seems like a considerable part of the stockpile has been retained, and I assume they'll try to enrich again. Having said that, the machinery of enrichment has largely been destroyed, I think, so it will take them some time. I think we've set the program back by several years, but the program has not been destroyed. That's the situation in my view.
Enough. Ambassador Trigunayat, has Iran emerged as this powerful bloc, this powerful country that took on both the United States and Israel against all odds? Despite sanctions, launched 14 missiles at US bases in West Asia and continues to bomb Israel and continues, one, it says, with its nuclear enrichment program, and two, support to entities like Hamas in Gaza.
Well, that is a fact that all the three entities, or 4H as they are called, if you include Qatar, Hezbollah, and Iraq, they do have a symbiotic relationship with Iran, and there is everybody recognizes that. They may have their own mind, and I agree with our Iranian guest that they often the Houthis have their own mind. Sometimes Hezbollah may have said it, but let us not uh, completely discount the fact that in this particular 12 days war, Iran has held out rather well. You can say so. Despite, as you mentioned, under sanctions, under all kinds of odds, it has continued to hold and respond back despite not having control over its own airspace, because they don't have a very big or good air force. But they have other facilities like the missiles and others that they have, and which they have mastered despite these sanctions. So that is something that is creditable. I have met a lot of Israeli friends, and they say that we hold the Iranians in good regard as far as their research acumen is concerned. So I think that this is something a given. Both countries, in my view, there are no winners in a war. Everybody is a loser. And in this one also, everybody is a loser. They will have to claim victory. They have been provided off ramps. But at the end of the day, we need to find some way where some kind of a dialogue diplomacy happens. I mean, there is no end to these kind of confrontations because they put back all countries back. Now, today, Israel is also suffering economically tremendously in the last 2 years' war. Large number of people have been redrafted and they have been working there, impacting the economy of the country, its own technological edge and everything. So its dependency on the United States has increased much more during these wars. So that is also, they have to take into account exactly if you want to continue to have some kind of a regional rapprochement is happening in the region in the past couple of years. I think that both countries will do well to find some kind of a modus vivendi rather than being in perpetual, considering each other as a threat to themselves.
By all accounts, the hostility remains, as high, if not higher, than before. But it remains to be seen if either side appoints a field marshal, like Pakistan did post-Operation Sindoor, appointed their general as field marshal to hide the failure, Sandeep, of their army losing to India in terms of Operation Sindoor. But that apart, right now, the situation does appear that Iran says they will continue to support Hamas, and Israel says they will remain in Gaza Strip as long as Hamas is not defanged, and this would mean this forever war continues.
Well, Gaurav, whatever happened in the last 20 months, it was not going to end one of the oldest wars in the world. I mean, this Iran-Israel proxy war has been on for almost 45 years. They've been fighting it through proxies until now, but it's only for the first time that this has erupted into full-scale conflict. But in Israel, they have a saying that every couple of years we have to go and mow the grass. And this is what seems to have happened in the case with Iran as well, that if you remember a couple of years back, almost 2 decades ago, there was this Stuxnet virus that was introduced to destroy a lot of the centrifuges that the Iranian nuclear weapons program, the Iranian nuclear enrichment program was using. So that set the program by set the program back by several years. And this is what's happened in 2025 as well. So this game will continue, Gaurav, every couple of years, as long as the regime in Iran remains inimical to the existence of Israel this 45-year thing, it will continue for several more years. That's why this thing of regime change was being talked about as the only way to end the hostility between Israel and Iran. So it is the Islamic regime of Iran that took power in 1979, and it's been fighting this endless war with Israel based on the issue of Palestine, which is, it's a Sunni Arab cause which is being fought by a country
Shia,
which is neither Sunni nor Arab. It's a Shia country. And it's, the larger game here, Gaurav, is for the leadership of the Islamic world. And Iran had no reason to jump into that conflict the way it did in 2023 on the 7th of October by activating all its proxies. It could have sat out of this conflict. It could have avoided this pain and this misery that has been caused to it. But I mean, that's the way the Islamic regime in Iran has been structured since 1979.
Mohammad Khatibi, you want to respond to that point that October 7 was a Hamas attack, a terrorist attack on the people of Israel. Iran could have sat it out, Hezbollah joining in, and then Iran supporting Hezbollah. It just set off, a domino effect, and this led to Assad regime collapsing, Hezbollah collapsing, Houthis being targeted, and now Iran directly being in the line of fire.
So this is not a war of Arabs, Sunnis, or whatever. This is a war of humanity. Israel is doing an ethnic cleansing in Gaza Strip and as well in the West Bank. So Iran's support for the Palestinians is not just because of the Hamas or
Sir, October 7 was a terror attack. Killing civilians is a terror attack. India is a victim of terror. So on this point, we are very clear, sir. October 7 cannot be seen as humanity or non-humanity and blah. That's plain, simple terror.
Let me ask you a question. Will that justify killing 50,000 innocent lives? Will that justify attacking every infrastructure
That's
in the
a
Gaza
separate
Strip?
issue. That's a separate issue. Nothing justifies killing innocents anywhere. Nothing justifies killing innocents anywhere. I'll get Jonathan to respond to it, but I want to stay on the point of terror. Did Iran have to come in when Hamas terrorists attacked civilians in Israel on a vacation? That's my simple point. There can be no justification of terror. Look, we are victims of Pakistani state-sponsored terror. That is why it triggers, this issue does trigger us.
So Iran's support for Hamas is a support of ideology. Iran supports Hamas not just because it is fighting Israel, because Hamas in so many ways is targeting military personnel. And what about the October 7 happened? I don't know. I don't believe the Israeli narrative of Hamas killing every civilian around Gaza Strip, because there were many reports that Israeli military itself killed many people, many Israelis in that attack. And there are media reports by the Israeli side that claim that Israeli military killed many of its own citizens. So about
I'll get
Hamas,
Jonathan Spear to respond to that. I was there from the 8th of October for a period of 20 days, and I covered every bit of that situation on ground wherever I had access to, and clearly that is not what I covered on ground. But Jonathan Spear, you want to respond to the point that, does it justify, does October 7 justify killing 55,000 people on the Gaza Strip?
Well, first of all, I was also there on October 8th. And I mean, the evidence is there also on film regarding the Hamas tactic of killing every civilian that it could find. And this is all filmed by Hamas fighters themselves, who were later killed by Israel, and then their GoPro cameras were taken. So, I mean, if someone, an apologist for the Iranian regime wants to deny the evidence of his own senses, I guess we shouldn't be surprised by that. With regard to 50,000 dead, this figure works on the assumption that Israel, after 18 months of war in Gaza, has not managed to kill a single Hamas fighter. Again, so with respect, this is an insult to the intelligence of people of average intelligence. So it's difficult to take such claims seriously. I think around 50,000 people have lost their lives, and I think between 20 and 25,000 of those, that's the figure at least which I'm familiar with, were Hamas fighters. So we have basically a ratio of 1-on-1 with regard to civilian versus military dead in Gaza. I can tell you that with regard, and I'm a student of this and an analyst of this, with regard to urban combat in the Middle East, that is very much within Western norms. If you were to look, for example, at the coalition fighting in Mosul against Islamic State, which I, as a journalist, by the way, covered closely inside Mosul, you would find that the ratio there is less good. In other words, that the American-supported forces inside Mosul were killing a higher number of civilians compared to fighters, of ISIS fighters, than the IDF has done in the incredibly more difficult conditions of the Gaza Strip. Why more difficult? Because Israel, foolishly, in my opinion, allowed 17 years for Hamas to build a massive tunnel system using international aid, which it had stolen, by the way, underneath the Gaza Strip. And Israel has been involved for the last 18 months in tremendously difficult urban combat
That's
in order
the
to
point
root out
that,
the Hamas
that we
fighters.
all come down to. The hostilities are so intense and deep-rooted. The 12-day war and this fragile ceasefire clearly would require intense negotiations to find a solution, or this may flare up once again. Jonathan Spare, Mohammad Khatabi, Ambassador Trigoniyat, and Sandeep Punithan for joining me here on this India Today special broadcast. Many thanks. I spoke to Israel's ambassador to India, Reuven Azar, on the changing dynamics in West Asia and the road ahead, and especially what happens now when it comes to Iran, what happens now when it comes to the Gaza Strip. We'll get you some excerpts of that conversation that we had yesterday. Take a look. Ambassador Azar was the former Deputy National Security Advisor to the Foreign Ministry in Israel. He's been the Deputy Ambassador to the United States of America. He's worked as a Special Advisor to Israel's Prime Minister. He's worked on that special team on the Abraham Accord. He's been a part of the Sanctions Committee on Iran. He's a paratrooper. Have I missed out on anything? I'm sure I've missed out a lot, but welcome on this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Gaurav.
So, was Israel able to achieve its aim when Israel bombed Iran? And why did the United States have to come in?
We are certainly nearing the end of our mission when it comes to the military targets that we had. We removed two main threats on our existence. The first is the nuclear military threat. We identified in the last few months that there was a clandestine criminal group of scientists that were actually assembling a nuclear weapon, but actually taking fissile material and trying to put it on a ballistic missile, okay? And the second thing is we neutralized is the ballistic missile program of Iran that we degraded, but the job is not yet done. There are still many launchers around there. We've been able to take out more than half of them. But still we're seeing barrages of missiles being fired at Israel that are causing huge devastation. So these two aims are the military aims, and we hope that after those are achieved, we'll be able to renew diplomatic efforts to create, to renew stability in our region.
So when we look at the situation right now, the Trinity that was targeted by the United States of America as part of Operation Midnight Hammer, along with your Rising Lion, why was Fordo the most difficult in your appreciation? Isfahan, Natanz, and Fordo. For the benefit of our viewers, explain why they had to be targeted and targeted together.
Natanz was the main facility in which Iran was enriching uranium. It had a surface facility and an underground facility that we targeted. Isfahan was the main conversion site in which you convert the fissile material into a metal that is being used on a nuclear device. And Fordo was less significant in terms of uranium enrichment capacity, but what it had is the immunity, so-called immunity of the presence in the underground. So for us, it would have been more difficult to tackle that because the ammunition we have is limited in power. And the fact that the United States decided to complement our effort with their own effort is very important because they had the right weapons needed in order to penetrate more than 60 meters with their Moab load, that facility, and to completely, if not destroy it, at least to take it into an unfunctional situation. So these are three of the main elements of the nuclear military program, but not the only ones. Mm-hmm. Israel has been targeting actually dozens of sites in which Iran has been conducting this illicit activity.
Is this operation, which is apart from destroying their nuclear capabilities and their missile force and their launchers, also to enforce a regime change? Because not only is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu indicating that, your Defense Minister Israel Katz has indicated that, and American President Donald Trump seems to have indicated that a regime change operation.
I want to make it very
Iran.
clear, because there is confusion regarding that. As much as we would like to see a regime change in Iran, we don't have an operational plan to change the regime in Iran. We don't see this as our role. We see it as a role of the Iranian people.
And that's why the bombing of the gates of the prison where you have political prisoners in
Yes,
Iran.
because we identify with the Iranian people. This is a symbolic action. We are not flying to Iran to liberate it with our ground forces, but we are signaling to the Iranian people that we are with them. This is a symbolism, a symbolic gesture that we've done.
But this is there an apprehension, as they fear this could be a forever war? The war that started with that October 7 attack is still on
This
and
has
could expand.
been a forever war, a forever attack of Iran coming from Iran. This started in the 90s when we were trying to promote peace and make peace with the Palestinians. And the Iranians started to support Hamas and the suicide bombings, and they derailed the peace process time and again. The Iranians have been doing damage to our region and to us for many, many years. We want to end this war. And we hope that finally, when the Iranians see that they are not immune anymore, that they will suffer the consequences to the extent that their regime will be put in danger, then maybe there is a chance that things will change. And we hope things will change.
How do you see Pakistan in all of this? Pakistan in a different context wants to recommend Donald Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize and then goes and stands with Iran that's sworn to Israel's destruction.
Well, we are not part of the Pakistani-Indian conflict. We are, of course, following with concern the fact that Pakistan is harboring terrorist organizations. Something that I think the entire world should cooperate in order to deal with. But we haven't seen the Pakistanis doing what the Iranians have been doing. Sending assistance to terrorist organizations in our region, trying to build a ring of fire around us. We haven't seen that. So, as I said, we're not looking for enemies.
Okay. But, since you talk about what's happening in your region, is Israel still standing by the two-nation theory, concept or a solution, an independent Palestine living in harmony next to Israel and not targeting your people like the way Hamas did?
We don't have an interest to control the daily lives of Palestinians outside Israel. What we like to do is to promote a self-Palestinian rule that will not threaten Israel. So we are ready to give the Palestinians the maximum authority to control themselves without threatening us.
But no Hamas in the Gaza Strip, for example.
Because Hamas is completely committed to destroy the state of Israel. So of course that we wouldn't agree. Look, we have been in a situation in which after we withdrew completely from the Gaza Strip with the hope that something positive will emerge there, okay? We've taken out all the settlements from there, even the graveyards we took out. Yeah. We left there nurseries, means to make a living. What Hamas did, a few months after we left, they completely destroyed the nurseries. They engaged in creating a war machine against us. And for years, we tried to avoid from going back to the Gaza Strip. We had zero interest of controlling the Gaza Strip. But we were left with no choice when they committed these terrible atrocities against us. And
what happens now? Because
now
President Donald Trump says he wants to build a Riviera there. And
so now Israel will have to stay there until Hamas is removed. We will have to contemplate new forces coming up, more moderate forces that will engage in de-radicalization of the population in Gaza, that will engage in construction, that will distance itself from terrorism, will distance itself from attacking the state of Israel. In that context, we can create a much better future for us and for our Palestinian neighbors.
You don't think Iran is going to get more aggressive in the times to come when it says suspend their parliament? Their Majlis has talked about suspending the IAEA. They're very unhappy with the United Nations, though they're seeking, some kind of intervention.
Gaurav, that they're very unhappy because they didn't expect what we did to them. The question is, what is the capability to go through with your intentions? So I think at the end of the day, people have to match their actions and their intentions with the capabilities they have. And therefore, I'm optimistic that we can de-escalate the situation and we can get a diplomatic solution.
Where do you see India and Israel's friendship with India in all of this?
Well, India is a great partner of Israel. We have a lot of trust between us. We've built this trust in decades of defense cooperation. We've built this trust in decades of agricultural cooperation. We have a lot in common. I think both nations are very old peoples that have very young countries with a lot of challenges of development that we can actually engage in sorting out together. And we also have a history of oppression and devastation that came from foreign forces that came and actually took our freedom from us. And the fact that now we are assuming our role, we are taking back our freedom, we are building our country. This is a very important ethos that we have in common, Gaurav. So I see, despite the differences in size, naturally, we are only a nation of 10 million people. And we are 150 times smaller than India. But when it comes to the ethos of building our nation, when it comes to the challenges of fighting radicalism, we stand together. And I know that India will have a huge role in promoting stability in our region, because as much as you grow, and your economy is growing very fast, and as much as you sign trade deals with other major countries, major economies in the world, you will need more this connectivity, the countries in our region can provide, that connect India with Europe, with the West. We can engage in projects of energy, of communications, of technology, of transportation. And this is just the beginning. I'm really not only hopeful, but optimistic, because we know what we can do. Because our countries are countries that are convinced now in the capability that we have in order to improve our lives. We have proved it, you have proved it, we have proved it, and we can do it together in a much better way.
And your reading of India's actions during Operation Sindoor, because that's also debated very extensively, but as somebody who's observed it and as a soldier, as a diplomat, how do you view that?
I saw a nation rising up to try to change the equation. We don't surrender to terrorism, and you don't surrender to terrorism.
And the policy of mowing the lawn, that I heard of in Israel, is that's constantly required? You need to constantly fight terror. We need to constantly fight terror. Is that the only way to move forward?
Look, there are many ways, and the situations are not necessarily similar. I don't want to get into the details because I'm not an expert when it comes to your security situation, your set of considerations. I trust the government of India to make the right moves for the interests of the Indian people.